Welcome to Custom Home Builder Solutions, also known as CHS. This is a continuation of the first video about allowances or options in CHS, working on our budget sheet and setting up allowances. This is part 2 of the videos about allowances, and we were discussing how you mark allowances on your budget sheet by using allowance as the unit measure for certain things, and we did that on our total appliance package. And we opened allowance tools, and we already talked about using an allowance worksheet to set up various notes to produce an allowance agreement that shows that we could give to the buyer, etc. Please watch part 1 for that. Then we opened this window to analyze allowance overs, unders, since CHS is going to track those for you. We pointed out that this job, we've just done the budget, it's not started, there are no actual costs yet, no purchase orders. And we pointed out that what we're going to do is compare the budgeted allowance amounts to the current estimated cost at completion, which can fluctuate as we issue purchase orders or posted costs. It's going to recognize those and adjust our estimated cost at completion for doing things like that. So let's see what happens to this over-under allowance if I go issue a couple of purchase orders. So I'm going to close this and close this little window. The budget's going to refresh in case I drilled down and changed anything that affects the budget. Excuse me. So let's get back here to our total appliance package. And you can quickly do POs by doing add new PO here, but I'd like to create a PO first from some items that I know that we've entered and the buyer has selected, etc. So we're going to issue a PO for that allowance amount. We've gotten the bid from our supplier, etc. And this was something I was doing earlier, so I'm just going to get rid of that item for a second. And we'll talk about that later. Notice that all of these are checked marked to create a PO because also the buyer selected them, and we used some tools to check mark all of these and got rid of any other appliances, so that we want to create a new purchase order, and this is actually the exact amount of the budget. We use this for our allowance after we were doing the selections, etc. We said this is your allowance. So let's create a purchase order for that budgeted amount, and let's do it for builder's display. And this video is not really about doing purchase orders, so we're going to just breeze right through this and not print it or do anything about create the other stuff on this PO screen. But notice that this is marked as a PO type budgeted, and it's already created, ready for me to email, write notes, attach the vendor bid, etc. if I'd like to. You'll notice that now all your items have been marked as having a PO attached to them. So we've issued one PO. So if we go here to the allowance tools and we look at our over under, we issued that PO for the exact same amount, and you'll see it showing up here, and we can drill down to look at some details about the PO if we like. It's showing that purchase orders are issued, but we are these are all showing still under because no activity has happened, but this is now showing that we've used up this allowance over here pretty much with our PO, but we don't have any difference in our budget and our POs. Now let's say that the buyer decides to add a refrigerator to all of this, and we're going to go ahead and issue what we call a variance PO for that refrigerator. And I'm going to do that using the little, you can do it in other places. If you watch the PO videos, you don't have to use your budget screen to be issuing POs, but it's a handy thing to do here. So I'll do add new PO. It tells me it already found a PO for this budget item in case I'm double doing something, but I know I'm not, so I'll continue to create a PO that I need to do here. And we're going to do the same vendor, builder's display, and we're going to change our PO title. It drops in based on the cost code that's selected, just for convenience if you like, and we'll just call it refrigerator for now for simplicity. And let's go ahead and say the unit price on that is $22.50. I'm just looking at something to check something real quick. Okay, and the tax rate is 8 1/4. And I'll create a purchase order with that information real quickly. And I can detail my items to say what kind of refrigerator and all of that, but we won't pause for that right now. But I'd like you to notice that I'm going to go ahead and call this a variance PO. I want to do that because I can print some reports of variance POs, which will give me some information, and I can give it a variance reason, and I'll just say buyer selection is over, buyer added a fridge or something. This is just internal notes about why we have a variance PO here. And I'll save this PO. So that means we've now issued a PO, an additional PO for appliances. So let's go back to our allowance over under and see what's happened with that. Now you're going to notice that estimated cost at completion has actually changed to the total of our purchase orders. If you drill down on that purchase order number over there, they've now gone up. You can see the budgeted one and the variance one and the amounts of both of those POs with tax, sales tax attached. And the difference is the amount of that PO that we just issued, the overage, the estimated cost of completion has now adjusted itself to be the amount of the POs because that's higher than what the budgeted amount is. And there has still been no actual cost posted to this, but that's why we compare this to the ECC so it can pick up what we're estimating it to cost right now based on activity in CHS. And so we can talk to the buyer about where it's headed. Notice that the difference is that, but in our first PO, when we were setting up our allowance, using our allowances worksheet, we said we want to charge a 25% markup on any overages. And so it's calculated that, so it's done the difference with the markup. And so we have one allowance adjustment, and of course other activity will go on here. And we were probably doing this before appliances would even really happen, but it's a good example. So right now, we know that we're going to want to collect an additional $3,044 from the buyer. And I'll talk about what happens if you issue a PO for that in a little while, and how that affects this allowance adjustment. I mean, a change order for that, not a PO. And we'll talk about that here in a minute, but I just wanted to show that. Now, I'd like you to see what happens if I post actual costs for less. For some reason, we are not going to pay as much as that for our purchase order. As we issued a purchase order for, we get a bill, we did some agreement, and it's actually for less than one of the POs. So this is also not a video about entering bills, so I'm gonna breeze through this, but I'm gonna post a couple of actual costs to Builders Display. Let's play like we've got a couple of bills from them. And this is me actually posting a payables bill to the books that we could either pay later or we could print a check for right now, etc. But let's look at our purchase orders and let's post this one for the budgeted cost. Let's just select that, which means it's going to fill in a whole lot of my bill fields for me. I can change the invoice amount or the date of the bill, and I can change the amount. So let's pay like instead of $4,749, the total invoice without tax was $4,235 instead. And it has a sales tax amount that's making it be this number total for it. And let's add another line. In other words, this is less than what our total appliance package. Maybe we made some deal or we didn't get some particular item, who knows. But let's now select our variance PO for the refrigerator and let that get filled in. And we'll go ahead, and that's what our bill is for. We had talked and we already knew the amount when we did the PO, and this is what we are paying for it. So that's our two bills that we want to enter, which total to this amount. We click submit to enter those bills. And I'm going to head, it's letting me know that actually we are over the budget because of that variance PO, and it's warning me about that just so that I'll know. And I actually know already what that's about, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue. I'm also going to post this as paid. I'm going to print a quick check for it. Maybe I'm needing to pay them real fast instead of having them be in my list of, and I'll call that check number 2536. It's going to check if that's duplicate. Then I'm just going to post it as paid. Maybe I hand wrote them a check. This video is not supposed to be about doing all of that right now. So let's close that. Now what I'd like to do is go back to our allowances tools, and I'd like to look at our allowance over under analysis. Now I want you to remember that earlier, the other thing I need to do, I forgot, just a minute, is look at my estimated cost of completion, and you'll be working on that each day. I'm going to open my estimated cost of completion worksheet. And you use this worksheet to look at your actual costs versus your budget. Look at your actual costs, and like I said, there'll be a whole bunch of other videos about this, but let's get down to the appliance packages. Notice that it shows our original invoice, it shows the POs we issued, and it shows we've posted actual costs of $7,020. Now and that's not as much as our POs, but we happen to know we're not going to be paying any more for those appliances, that whatever happened, we're going to pay less. So I can check mark this as done and watch what happens to my ECC. It's now changed to 7,020 because I check marked that as done. And so that means it's only over budget by $1,879. So on the ECC, you can also open the allowances tools, which is a good place to be while you're analyzing allowance over unders as you go on through the job. Now notice that that the ECC has now adjusted itself down, because we said that our actual costs are done, and a little check mark will show up here showing that. We could drill down to what our actual costs are if we need to see them. And it breaks the lines by sales tax so that we can do reports searching for sales tax easily, if we need to see the detail behind that. But notice that our difference is now a little less, because our estimated cost of completion has gone down. We apply the 25% markup, and we see that this is the amount that we need to, our adjustment that we need to have for collecting, which is a little less because we've now said our estimated cost at completion is less. Now the other thing I'd like you to see is why we do this, the allowance, why we're tracking this allowance. And that has to do with, if I go to the reports here, and one of those say that it has to do with revenues, is we can produce something called a contract balance and revenues report, and we'll talk about that. It's telling me that if I want to do more about setting price, I can click a button at the top, but I'm not going to, we've done all that already in our previous videos. Now notice that this contract type is marked as fixed, and if it's fixed, you type in a sales price like we did in some earlier videos. Then it adds change orders that have been approved, and it adds any allowance adjustment, and it comes up with a revised price. And it shows that revised price less all of your revenues received, and what the contract balance is right now, what is still owed to you. Of course, like I've said, this is very early in the job, and all we've done is receive a down payment, and this is showing the detail of revenues down here. But I just wanted you to see why we are having CHS track the over allowance adjustments, and that'll go up and down as we go through the job. This is actually more relevant near the end. And the reason I wanted to point it out is if you decide that you're going to do a change order for that difference, for that overage, I want you to see how that is handled by CHS so that we don't do a double dipping here of the allowance overage and the change order that's issued. But I intend to do that in the very next video, and then show you some reports that you can get, just some analysis reports. And that next video shouldn't take too long. So please watch that one, and thank you for watching this one.